Let's explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Breaking History. Gordon, how are you doing?
I'm great, Matt. How are you? Well, not great.
Yeah.
I'm fighting off a man flu, but other than that, I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, it's always a weird question to be asked, right? How are you doing when a war is waging? It's never an easy, straightforward answer. But we got a lot to talk about. We have a hard stop, or I have a hard stop. You can keep going if you want at 1 o'clock. I got to jump into something. So the world's given us a lot to speak about, I guess. The war began on the 28th of February. As far as I could tell, most recently, Lebanon has been invaded. There's a ground invasion there. 500 civilians, the last count in Lebanon, have been killed. And it's looking so far like the trajectory is not awesome. But we're going to talk about that after a few words from today's sponsors, starting with Rattlesnake Meat, and then we're going to go to Goldco. So let's hear a word from Rattlesnake. What's really on your plate? Grocery store beef could have dozens of DNA profiles. Chicken labeled organic or natural. Often just processed and shipped in bulk from the same two companies, no matter the store or the label. At Rattlesnake, they control every step: raising, aging, packing. No subsidies. Big ag middlemen, just real honest meat that tastes like it should. Order straight from the farmer. Order from Rattlesnake Meat Company today. Head over to rattlesnakemeats.com/Badlands. Promo code Badlands to get started. So that's Rattlesnake Meats. There we go. And now we've got a word from Goldco. It is officially a new era for gold and silver. Gold has broken $5,000 an ounce, and silver has surged past 100. In 2025 alone, gold jumped 64%, while silver skyrocketed 150%. And with political and economic uncertainty ahead, 2026 could bring even more moves. After such a historic run, a pullback is normal. Metals move fast. To some consolidation is expected, but top analysts are calling for even higher prices. We've seen the first bank failure of 2026, with regulators shutting down Metropolitan Capital Bank and Trust in Chicago. Could more follow? It's no surprise Americans are pulling money from banks and turning to the proven protection of gold and silver. Big news. Goldco is celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a limited time bonus. Get up to 10% free gold or silver, plus free storage and free home safe with qualifying cash purchase. This offer won't last long, so act now. Are we seeing the early signs of another 2008 style crisis? Don't wait for the next shoe to drop. Protect your wealth with precious metals, because in uncertain times, gold and silver shine brightest. Visit badlandsgold.com today for your free 2026 gold and silver kit and bonus buy. That's badlandsgold.com. Okay, so as of now, things seem to be spiraling a little bit out of control. I'd like to know, I know you and I were talking about this. The last episode we did was on Wednesday. We discussed our hopes, the evidence that these were the words promoting the concept of a strike on Iran was maybe smokescreen, betraying perhaps another maneuver that was being set up in the background that would be much more reasonable and cogent. That's not what happened. So how are you feeling? How are you thinking about your analysis at this point?
Yeah, I mean, just owning what I said last week, because I was very certain we weren't going to get a war.
Me too. I was absolutely not thinking in these terms necessarily either. I think both of us were seeing that there's been a trend over quite some time under Trump where terrible things will be said and then relatively reasonable actions will be taken pretty consistently. So we just sort of extrapolated that trend into our analysis there. So far, yeah. So I get that.
Yep. So now we just analyze what we see as we go. Yeah, I mean, disappointed my initial knee-jerk reaction to it, as I've been saying this week, is just disappointed that the neocons and the Zionists got their way on a pretty significant, like one of the bigger foreign policy issues of Trump's era, like the past 10 years. So that is disappointing. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how this all unfolds. There are some developments with this that are interesting that we'll definitely talk about. But yeah, the initial reaction hearing about this on Saturday was disappointment that, the warmongers ostensibly got their way.
Yeah. I got a little clip I wanted to just two short clips that I thought were relevant, because I do sense that at least a certain faction of decision making, both in Israel but also in corridors of Anglo-Zionist, Christian Zionist influence maker, or policymakers in the West, do seem to have an eschatological sort of way of thinking which transcends conventional ideas of self-interest and short-term geopolitical maneuvering. And there's this strange speech. Somebody sent me this thing where Pete Hegseth said something recently in regards to the evils of Iran as being it's a Shia, largely dominated by Twelver philosophy. The Twelvers being those who believed that the 12th Imam, the follower of Ali, has been in occultation for over 1,000 years and will reemerge now as, I guess this is tied to the Al-Mahdi concept, to fight with restored Jesus against Satan at the end times. So he's criticizing this eschatological paradigm in Iran, but I'm going to just compare it to something he did or said in Israel in 2017, just for the sake of shits and giggles. So here's the most recent thing.
President Trump has also been very consistent. Crazy regimes like Iran, hell-bent on prophetic Islamist delusions, cannot have nuclear weapons. It's common sense.
All right. Prophetic regimes with delusions should not have nuclear weapons. Okay, well, let's just compare that to a country that does have nuclear weapons that he was speaking in 2017. Here we go.
You had a chance to go see the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels, so much of the old city. And as you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle, 1948 was a miracle, 1967 was a miracle, 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle, and there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible. I don't know how it would happen. You don't know how it would happen, but I know that it could happen. That's all I know. And a step in that process, a step in every process, is the recognition that facts and activities on the ground truly matter. And that's why going and visiting Judea and Samaria, understanding that sovereignty, the very sovereignty of Israeli soil.
I can't do it. I'm sorry. It's too much. It goes on for another minute. It's too dizzying. Here, let me just stop this thing completely. But the psychodynamics going on behind the eyeballs when you hear words like that being spoken, and then what these miracles are of 1917 and 1948 and 1967 that he's referring to, they're not miracles at all. These are atrocious occult British imperial maneuvers to create an artificial synthetic state that could be weaponized for the entirety of the next century, right? So right now it seems like Israel is going full hog Greater Israel. It seems like there's celebrations and bunkers all over Israel, all over Tel Aviv. They're like getting drunk with happiness, but it's a weird thing to celebrate considering how many people have to die, including your own Jewish people, for that sort of thing to manifest. But right now, I mean, how do you? I heard that Benjamin Netanyahu was doing a weird. He's celebrating it a weird way. He got the hell out of there with his kids, right? He just like got on a plane and flew over to like Cyprus, and they basically told him, no, you can't land here. You're not welcome. And then he's like, okay, we'll go to Germany.
Who is that?
Netanyahu.
No, yes, I saw his plane flew to Germany. Was he like? I didn't know if he was on the plane or not, but yeah, I mean, I definitely saw that his plane, like they moved his plane out of the country.
Yeah. Because Cyprus said no, and then so he basically went to Germany as far as I last checked, and his kid and wife went down to Florida. So there's a certain lack of authenticity, to say the least, from I don't know how the people actually living in Israel are receiving that kind of information from the person who's been committing to this all-out war for so many years, really since the 90s. Like you see some of the videos of Benjamin Netanyahu saying we have to strike Iran, because actually I've got a little video of that too. I just put out a little article, and people have probably seen the video where Benjamin Netanyahu has just been saying for how many, since 1993, that Iran is on the verge of a nuclear weapon. They're just months away. And this is a little article where I just embedded this crazy video where this guy seems to have finally gotten what he wants. I don't know if you could hear this. Oh, the video's not available. That's scandalous. Never mind.
Which video is it?
Oh, it's the one where it's like a little 1-minute montage of him saying Iran is just 3 months away from having a nuclear weapon.
Here, I can probably find that in a minute.
Really? Oh, I got it. It was not embedded, but I was able to get it by simply clicking on it in YouTube. So I'll just share the YouTube video instead, and that should work okay. I think share screen, and then here it is. Here's this asshole.
Is it playing? I don't think you added it to the stage.
Was that?
I don't think you added it to the screen.
Oh, I've been playing it. I thought I did. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were still loading it. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
Totally right. I've just been starting.
Restart it.
All right, here it is.
Stopped. Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year. It could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb. Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade. Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Atera is the IT painkiller. Remote monitor.
Oops. Yeah. So I got to say, he's got a great radio voice. It kind of rolls like butter, and it's impressive, since, we want to be optimistic, want to say something nice about somebody before punching them. He's got a lot of conviction. It's really amazing to see that since the early 90s, he was able to say those exact same words from the script with an emotional intensity that seems so authentic. And that's got to be challenging to do that, to be the broken record, but yet to still speak with meaning consistently. And again, what do you think about like what he was doing right before he began this script, when he was meeting with Rabbi Schneerson, right? And you show me that video. You're the first person to actually introduce this to me way back when of his chastised by the famous Rebbe of the Chabad Lubavitch, saying, "Hey, you're not fast enough in bringing about the Messiah." I think it's here. This is the here. It's the this video here, where the late Rabbi Schneerson in 1990. Benjamin Netanyahu was not near political power at that point.
Well, he was, I believe he was the foreign minister at that point.
Oh, he's the foreign minister. Okay, right.
Developed a
Yeah.
close relationship. Soon after entering Israel's parliament for the first time, Netanyahu paid his respects to his mentor.
You're just starting in your role. He's saying, I came to you at the start, Netanyahu, and I tend to return to you many times. The Rebbe says you will have to struggle with 119 others in the Knesset. Surely you won't be intimidated.
Mute the video.
Oh, wait, okay, I should do that, eh?
Yeah. That way they, and then we can hear
God is
your
on your side.
view overdubs.
Oops. Here we go. Damn overdubs. Since we last met, many things have progressed, says the Rebbe to Bibi. Many things have progressed, says Bibi. What hasn't changed, however, says the Rebbe, is that the Messiah still has not come yet. So do something to hasten his coming. We're doing it, says Bibi. Apparently it's not enough, says the Rebbe. Since many hours have already passed today, and he is still not here. All right. Just absolutely bewildering.
Yeah, so going back to Pete Hegseth's comments about prophetic like ideologues who see, like use end time prophecy and dispensationalism to impact their politics, their geopolitics. Yeah, and especially when you're talking about nuclear weapons. I mean, was he describing Iran or was he describing Israel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Especially with what we know Israel has done to acquire those nuclear weapons legally and against the better interest of the United States with traders in the 60s. Probably Satanists too. You and I were just touching on it, but it does seem like a lot of Crowleyites, including Jack Parsons, the guy who was doing Babylon workings rituals with L. Ron Hubbard in the deserts, following Crowley's, program to usher. These guys were directly tied into Israel. The same Satanists that killed JFK, like Louis Mortimer Bloomfield, who was working with the Haganah, that guy who's heading up the assassination bureau in Montreal, Permindex, which Jim Garrison, the district attorney, discovered to be at the heart of this thing with the highest noble families of Europe, which were all sitting on the boards of directors, right? This is the thing that was working with the ADL, with the B'nai B'rith, to establish the state of Israel, while at the same time working with Satanists to kill our leaders and colonize the United States and transfer lethal weaponry, including nuclear, to Israel, who then destroyed, in the miracle of 1967 that Hegseth celebrated, a ship, the SS Liberty, that killed how many U.S. soldiers, right?
Yeah.
That we never did anything about. We never
30-some deaths and then like 100 and some injuries, something like that.
Yeah, and then some strange deaths after in the years following too, of those who were trying to speak openly and bring congressional oversight into investigating what had actually happened, died strange deaths before they could actually follow through on their promised testimonies. So you've got this strange, disgusting thing. Now Iran, finally, I got political back in 2006, and I remember lobbying in Congress. I was with the LaRouche organization back then as a volunteer, and we had a list. We were going to Congress in 2006, 2007 to stop Dick Cheney from bombing Iran. And I remember in, I think it was November of 2007, he came close. All the propaganda was in play for a strike. And the thing that stopped it was that he had to go in for like heart surgery, and he was sort of out of play for like a week, at which point some analysts at the National Intelligence Estimate basically went public revealing that Cheney had been lying and that there was no evidence that Iran had been pursuing a nuclear weapon, as Cheney and all of the media, the BBC, Fox News, everybody was in lockstep. And then these whistleblowers circulated or made public these documents proving that any weapon of mass destruction program that Iran might have had was absolutely abandoned in 2003 when the fatwa against nuclear bombs was issued by the Ayatollah. And that took all the wind out of the sails of war. And at that point, that bought Iran a lot of time. So I remember that was what got me originally charged up, because I was like, oh, that's a big deal. Iran is the fourth biggest military at that time, at least in the world. I don't know what they're at today. Probably the same. I think they've been preparing for war since then. So they've probably got a lot more capabilities of military production. A lot more deals have been worked out with the Chinese, with the Russians, to supply the means of defending themselves. So yeah, the implications are very big.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there's a few different things to consider that I've been thinking about a lot, and a few interesting developments that we should talk about as it relates to like the consequences of the war, and like what will end up happening, I think, because of the situation, which may or may not have been by design, from Trump's perspective, but we'll see. So like the first thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is what I would call the Israel paradox. So like if you go and you listen to the rhetoric and the musings of people like Jonathan Greenblatt, the ADL, he's been talking about this a bunch over the past year. The recognition by the diaspora, which I say the diaspora because it's across the political spectrum. Like Jonathan Greenblatt, he's not a right-wing guy. He's a Zionist, but he's not a right-wing guy. I guess you'd say he's left-wing, right, left-wing, progressive, whatever. But very much his value system aligns with someone like Bibi Netanyahu when it comes to Israeli politics, right? And like the agenda, the political agenda of Bibi Netanyahu. I think Jonathan Greenblatt and Bibi are probably on the same page for the most part.
Yes.
And I think it's probably many such cases when you look at a lot of these like left wing and right wing, like Israeli Jewish politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that Jonathan Greenblatt has been talking about a lot is lamenting lamenting on one hand, but just recognizing an observation that every generation of Americans, the support for Israel has waned significantly, right? So when you look at the support for Israel among like the baby boomer generation versus like Gen Z, the Gen Z side is like almost near zero, is nearing zero in terms of like support for like political Zionism, right?
Yes.
Versus the baby boomer generation. So this is recognized by Greenblatt, and he has said we are making significant steps to try to reverse this. This is like the crisis of our time. We need to address this, because if we lose this, this is going to be a blow to the state of Israel and its security. So if you accept that, if you accept that trend is real.
Just quick, let me actually show a graph featuring that very trend that you are describing right now. That's actually a Gallup poll World Affairs survey showcasing the support of the American sympathies in the Middle East situation between Palestinians in blue and Israel in green over the past 25 years. And you can clearly see exactly what you've been pointing out, that for the first time ever, sympathies have crossed over to be more sympathetic to the Palestinians, and Israeli support has just completely collapsed.
Yeah. And so like that graph, as much as you want to believe or you can accept, a single poll and a single graph, I imagine just looking at the numbers and like the data that is not very descriptive in terms of what the sample size is or whatever, you would assume that's just everybody. That's just like a holistic snapshot of everything, right? If you were to break that down though by generation, which they have done in other charts and other like research, the support is still pretty high if you isolate just out baby boomers, right? But if you if you isolate the like millennials or Gen Z, it's very different. Like it looks way worse than that graph even presents it, right? Because that graph is averaging out the baby boomers with, you know, the Gen Z demographic. So again, like if you're looking at that and you accept it, like you accept that's where the trend is. Now, can you reverse it? You know, can Jonathan Greenblatt and the ambition of his friends? That remains to be seen. That's a rhetoric exercise. That's an exercise in persuasive rhetoric, persuasive argument, right? I mean, that's the crux of politics. But if you accept that that's the trend, and they look at that and they're like, this is a real thing. This is very, very dangerous. And if you understand the rhetoric and the mindset of the Israeli national security policy, which is anything that threatens Israel is an existential threat. And anything that threatens the state of Israel and its existence should be destroyed or should be dealt with, right, in one way or another. Whether it's censorship or you know, public rebuke, public ridicule, whatever it is, they have, you know, character assassination. They have different ways of dealing with these different threats. But if you accept that this is where the trend is headed in America, that America is trending towards losing support, political support for Israel, from their perspective, if they're looking at this from a survival standpoint, there's two things. Number one, their time is short in terms of like squeezing out whatever they can from the United States, whether it's in the form of actual material support, you know, like aid money, military aid, that sort of thing, right? The ability for them to persuade the Pentagon and the State Department to wage war on their behalf, right, in places like Iran, the Middle East. That door, like that window, is closing. But at the same time, there's another thing that I would imagine they're discussing and they're worried about, and that is the very real possibility that in the future, at some point, you know, decades from now, not only will they lose the support of America, but potentially America could become a threat to Israel. Like if there's enough political animus toward Israel, like we're seeing right now manifest, America could actually flip and become a threat to them, the same way that they perceive right now Iran being a threat, or Turkey being a threat, or the Muslims being a threat, right? And so if they're long-term planning, which they are very good at long-term planning when it comes to this stuff. Maybe one way they would look at it is they say, all right, well, we need to make sure that America is sabotaged to the extent that it can't hurt us 30 years in the future, right? Like today, we're not worried about the U.S. military waging war on Israel, but 30 years from now, who knows? It could be a very different world. So how do we prevent us from being in a situation where if the U.S. military wanted to come after us because it's no longer sympathetic, you know, from a sentimental, epistemological, dispensational standpoint, how do we stop that? You know, and then you look at some of the things that are happening in America with like cultural Marxism and like the decline of masculinity and like the decline of military standards. You know, it's almost like siphoning out all of the wealth and the value and the military prowess of America and almost transferring it to Israel. And then you look at what Netanyahu's been up to lately. He's pivoting to India. He's pivoting away from dependency on the U.S. He said he wants Israel to become fully independent in terms of like its military capability and developing its own weapons, developing its own military industrial complex, its own defense industry. Modi visited there last week, and there was a pretty significant like speech he gave in the Knesset. But it's clear that Netanyahu is trying to diversify the relationships they have and not putting all the eggs in one basket of the United States, but trying to spread it out a little bit and hedging bets. And I think that might be part of what we're looking at is we're looking at this idea that if the concern from like Jonathan Greenblatt standpoint is that 30 years from now, there will be no political support in America for Israel, would they then view America as a threat, as a clear and present danger? And are they really going to wait 30 years from now to deal with that? Or are they going to start dealing with it right now? So like those are the things that I think about and I look at and I'm like, you know, these are the reasons that faction would be pushing America in certain directions and trying to capitalize in this moment on, all right, let's squeeze every last bit of usefulness we can out of this before that window totally closes forever.
But did the U.S. need to do this? Like, I mean, I've been watching some of the messaging coming out of like Marco Rubio and others describing that they went into this as sort of a preventative defensive strategy because they didn't, I guess there's the sense that they knew that Israel was going to do it anyway. So rather than having Israel just spark a fight with Iran that could result in massive chaos, they said, well, let's get in there first and preemptively strike Iran with Israel. Some people are saying that this is brilliant. I've encountered a lot of influencers out there saying that this is great. Wouldn't it have been like just wiser to simply just step back and say, well, if Israel wants to go and risk its existence by starting this fight, why don't they just go at it solo and take the repercussions? Like, why did the U.S. have to get in there and get their hands bloody?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so let's play that video that you're referring to, and we will. Let me see. It's right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the Rubio clip you're referring to that kind of went viral the other day.
Here, I'll share it.
I've been asked is why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true because, in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act. Going back.
Yeah. So, and that obviously triggered everybody on the internet to say, well, obviously that means Israel led us into the war.
Yeah.
So the point that I was just making, the long-winded point that I just made was that's the motivation from the Israeli, like the Israel lobby standpoint of like why they would be pushing for this, not just in the past month or two, but in, for years and years and years. Right. And I do think that there was like a major momentum around this issue to lead to this moment that has very little to do with, specifically Trump's presidency or specifically whatever's happening right now in the Middle East, right? I think this was always something that was on the agenda. It's something that I prognosticated 3 years ago, because I thought that was what made sense, that like what they would try to do, like from a pragmatic standpoint. And so then the question is, all right, well then how do you deal with it from the American perspective, right? From the American patriot, like earnest populist standpoint, how do you thwart this? How do you deal with it? So what Rubio just described right there was that Israel was pretty much going to move forward regardless of whether or not which is what a lot of the reporting out there was saying as well, is like, even if America decides they don't want to go to war with Iran, Israel's going to go ahead and do it because they feel like this is their chance and this is when they want to take their shot, and they probably won't get the shot again. So that's what all the rhetoric out there was that Israel was going to move forward. And so what Rubio was saying is we knew that. And so we wanted to go ahead and take the initiative away from them. That idea is a callback actually to Operation Midnight Hammer, because that's kind of what Trump said was his thinking behind Midnight Hammer, which again, I'm not even convinced that was something that actually happened. There was just a story that was told, but that was Trump basically saying, all right, I did the thing that everyone wanted to happen, so now we can stop fighting and the war's over. 12-day war, said and done, call the planes back. It's done. So then you get, before I play these other clips, you get Trump asked about this yesterday during his meeting with the German Prime Minister Merz. And he said something that I thought was like really, really interesting. Really kind of changes that dynamic significantly.
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand, but Israel was ready and we were ready, and we've had a
How do you read that?
powerful impact.
Well, so the way I read that is there's a number of things. Number one, as I went over on my show yesterday, you may recall that back on January 18th, when the neocons were all banging on the table, being like, "We got to go start this war with Israel," with Iran, like what's the holdup, right? Netanyahu came out and actually asked Trump to slow down. He was like, "Hold up, we're not quite ready to defend against like a response from Iran yet. Let's make sure we have all of our ducks in a row before we move forward." Now, what he meant, I think, specifically was that you don't have enough assets in the region to like protect us if you do this. So let's get more assets in the region. Let's get our some aircraft carrier strike groups in the region, which they didn't have at the time. They do now. So I think that's partly what he meant. But it's interesting because we also got this commentary from, and by the way, Pete Hegseth came out and reposted that video. Let me show you. I screenshotted this and then and sent it to everyone and like sent it to John and all them because let me see if it's on this account.
Not the Solomon Temple video.
No.
Okay.
It was it was the video that I just played of Trump saying
okay.
saying Israel didn't lead us into this. We actually forced Israel's hand, and then Hegseth reposted it and said this is 100% correct. And then Ezra Cohen Watnick reposted that comment. And so there's again just consensus among a lot of these Trump administration officials that it wasn't Israel who forced us into a war. It was us who forced Israel into a war. And then if you look at right now what's happening in Tel Aviv, which is hard to discern because there's AI nonsense all over the internet, and then in Israel is very tight-lipped about what they let out in terms of information. They're arresting journalists on the street who are covering this stuff. There's videos of that. But if you go and you I was listening to Bannon interview somebody yesterday, and both Bannon and the guy he was interviewing both said, look, I've spoken to many, many friends in Tel Aviv. They're getting pounded right now. They're getting pounded in a way that they didn't think was going to happen. And even Netanyahu's caught off guard on how significant the Iran's response is. And according to Iran, according to Russia, this is only the beginning. They haven't even broken out the biggest stuff they have yet. So, I can't help but wonder, Matt, if that's what is going to happen here. Trump has made it very clear he wants a short window. He wants a short little operation. He wants a special military operation, not even a war. He says 4 weeks, but we're ahead of schedule.
Yeah, but do you believe though that they're serious when they say that Iran would have attacked American bases if Israel had gone alone during the peace negotiations with the Americans in Oman? That right in the middle of the peace negotiations and Israel strikes Iran, that Iran would have immediately have started attacking all of the U.S. assets in the Middle East? Is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Doesn't that make no sense?
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it's it's hard to say. I think from Iran's perspective, they don't think Israel is going to do anything without the backing of the U.S. because they want the U.S. military doing most of this, right? or at least protecting them. So would they believe that? I guess the question is, would Iran believe, even if Israel did act alone without U.S. involvement, would Iran even believe that? I don't know. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. I think they could conceive of that, but would they actually believe that officials in the U.S. government, because I do think there are plenty of neocons still bopping around, did they actually not want a war with Iran? I mean, I think Iran probably thinks they do.
Well, based on the evidence that I've seen, because I know when Soleimani was killed in January 3rd of 2020, Trump got on the phone and called the Iranian leadership straight from the Oval Office. Remember that? And he basically said he had a back and forth all day, bypassed the State Department. And I think it was through the Swiss embassy, where they have this old school, like a landline or a fax line or something that they were communicating with that bypassed the Five Eyes. And they basically, he basically communicated with them and got them to to basically tone down, to not retaliate. He explained that things are out of control inside of the U.S. administration, but they negotiated some sort of a tit for tat, like you could do a retaliatory revenge strike for the optics, give us some foreknotice, which they did. American military were evacuated from a certain base, I think in Iraq, and the Iranians struck that. They declared victory and revenge was done, and we all kind of went back to relative norm. It seems like Iran has shown evidence that they understand that there are these battles within, the U.S. establishment and are open to working with that fact. So it doesn't strike me that right in the middle of what seems to be the most successful peace negotiations that we have yet seen, that they would have necessarily have struck or believed that the U.S. was behind Israel's decision to go and sabotage the peace negotiations, which, again, Iran, according to the Omanian foreign minister, right, Iran had agreed, Ali Larijani's people had agreed to full verification process to the IAEA. They agreed to no stockpiling, to downgrading, to ensuring that they would not enrich uranium beyond a certain percentage. Like everything was agreed upon. On top of the fact that you had the offers from Russia to do a lot of the enriching and then send the enriched uranium for civilian use. So all back to Iran. So a lot of these, it was like the biggest success moves ever. And then I don't know. I just don't think that Iran would have believed that that the U.S. was culpable for any strike that Israel would have launched at that time. So to have, I don't know, it just seems like either a blunder or a deceit, one of the two that seems to be behind the decision making to go in. And the first thing as well, for me, the optics are so bad. The optics and the morality, because one of the first things that were struck wasn't, I mean, yeah, they killed Khamenei, the guy who put the fatwa, or who supported most vigorously the fatwa against nuclear weapons mass destruction, and his daughter and his granddaughter and the defense minister and the chief of staff, and Ahmadinejad, who's now Ahmadinejad, who is maybe he was pretty unhinged, like his rhetoric was quite fiery back in the day and very useful for the neocons and Netanyahu to say, look, they want death to America. Look at what Ahmadinejad is saying. But now Ahmadinejad, who is retired, he's been killed. So now he's a martyr. Now they're turning him into a martyr figure. And you could see, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. And the girls' school, that was again, and why of all the things to target would you pick a school of 7 to 12-year-old children to bomb?
That was, and I think as Iran reported, that actually was that was Israel's attack. I think Israel attacked the girls' school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was because they specifically blamed that on Israel. They actually didn't blame it on the U.S. They blamed that on Israel.
Well, that's good that they could make that differentiation. But that showcases again that they do differentiate, that the U.S. is not in control. So I really don't think they would have. I think Trump and Hegseth and Rubio are wrong when they say that the U.S. was feeling insecure.
I think you're right, but consider this. So consider this.
Yeah.
Trump says he wants a short operation and done. And I mean, is that realistic? I don't know. Like, is it realistic to say, hey, we're going to do 3 weeks of war and then we're done? Like, time out. Like, we're good, guys. Game over. Like, let's all go. Let's all go out for ice cream now. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, Trump certainly has demonstrated in the past that he can do like a limited operation and then just stop. It's worth pointing out that this is exactly what what's his name, Cheney called for with Iraq. He was like, "Oh yeah, it'll be a couple weeks, and then we'll be done." But here's what's interesting: Israel doesn't want a 4-week war. Israel wants like a 4-year war. They want this thing to keep going and going and going and going and going because they've already said when we're done with Iran, we're going to Turkey. When we're done, like they've already started a war with Lebanon. They started that war. You have this. Let's pull my screen back up. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Here. It's
okay, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, so here's Benny Gantz from a few days ago.
I think eventually there will be a need for boots on the ground.
I would not exclude it for those reasons or other, but we'll have to see how it goes forward.
And will that include Israeli boots on the ground, do you think?
I exclude nothing. We've been waiting for 47 years, and we came to a point that every necessary means should be taken in order to achieve our goals.
What we're seeing from...
Okay, so now he's talking about boots on the ground in Iran, which like all the experts and analysts for years have said there's just no way that the IDF is even considering this because it'd be too insane. I've actually been saying that for the past year that I think this is what the goal is. I'll get to that in a second. Here, I just saw this as I was pulling up these clips. I'm watching this for the first time myself. Here's James Comer now from today saying the exact same thing.
I know you have to keep a lot of cards close to the vest on this, but we've already lost 6 troops, sir. The president says he does expect more. A lot of Americans and military families want to know if their loved ones are about to be deployed to Iran for this. Will there be boots on the ground? The president has yet to rule that out.
I certainly hope not. If there are boots on the ground, I hope they're not on the ground any longer than the boots on the ground were in Venezuela. But I think that that's something the president knows that members of Congress certainly hope doesn't happen, but sometimes that's unavoidable in a situation like this. And you mentioned 6 troops had lost their lives. Some had been from Fort Knox in Kentucky, my home state. So, we're devastated, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with the families of anyone that's been lost or wounded thus far.
So now you have an American politician saying, "Yeah, we might need to put boots on the ground in Iran."
Yeah.
And then here, but let's go back to this. This is my appearance on John Harold's show, April 10th of last year.
Real quick, please. Why Israel wants Syria? They want this thing that's called the David Corridor, which this southern portion of Syria is controlled by the United States, so they can access. This is the Euphrates River. East of the Euphrates is Kurdistan. And so the Kurds are allies. All of these are U.S. bases. All the U.S. bases we have in Syria are over here. The IDF wants direct access on land to these bases and to Kurdistan. I think, and this is my speculation, so that as a staging ground for an invasion into Iran and a war with Iran. So they want to create this corridor on the southern border called the David's Corridor. And that's what I think this is about. And Turkey could potentially be the forcing function to stop that if cards are played right. So I think that might be what the play is here, is to stop the IDF from doing that. The States is trying to make peace with Iran. Where does that put things when Israel eventually tries to make that move? Yeah, exactly. And
so it seems to me what potentially might happen is we might see a situation where Trump is like, all right, we're done. The Iran war is over. Israel's like, oh, we're not done. Like we're going to keep going. Oh, yeah. And because they're going to try to maybe do a land invasion, which may or may not work, but they're going to keep getting pounded. They're getting pounded right now. That's what all the reports are. Are they going to be forced to surrender? Like, I wonder if Netanyahu's put himself in a situation where he's now been given everything he could possibly ever want. He's like a kid on Christmas morning. He's been given everything he's ever asked for. the war with Iran, but I think he's bitten off more than he can chew. I think this is going to end up actually being way more than what they can handle.
Well, you see it already. They're stuffing so much in their mouth already. They've got the invasion of Lebanon. You know,
Yes.
Hezbollah is just saying the era of peace is over. Now we're entering a new era. And Aoun, who's been trying to de-weaponize, disarm Hezbollah, is freaking out because he's kind of a puppet and he's trying to like have nice playtime with Israel, but Hezbollah is pretty well organized. So now you've got an invasion of Lebanon. Body count is growing very fast. Legislation has already been passed in the Israeli Knesset since July of last year, sanctioning the annexation of the West Bank, as well as a big territory in Jordan. We have. It seems like they're biting off, like you said, more than they could chew is an understatement.
Yes.
Now they haven't unleashed. We know that there's probably well over 100 nuclear warheads that Israel has, with some peculiar things like the Samson Doctrine, which makes any rational person is very uneasy about how that will be used and against whom exactly. A lot of the Arab countries don't officially have nuclear warheads. Israel does. To what degree will they use them? To what degree will they use them against their allies? As we've also heard certain officials make the point that that's also a policy doctrine. I don't know. The other thing, too, is that Iran, you brought up India playing a very dangerous game, meeting with Netanyahu, meeting with Carney for moving away from the BRICS and towards the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. That was what Modi had discussed with Netanyahu right before this war began. Well, also, there's an idea of a NATO-like structure with Israel and India playing a key role in the Middle East, and a few other friendly Arab countries would be a part of that as well. That was also floated. I forget the name, I2J2 or something. But people are wondering, like, well, I know that a lot of good people are confused and have been listening to some of the reporting by, but like a lot of MAGA influencers out there, like the Promethean Pack, Barbara Boyd, Susan Kakinda crew, they've been putting out messaging saying that actually this is great because Iran was evil and Iran is actually the city of London and NATO. Yeah, you saw that too. It's crazy. My stomach turned. And it's like, no, actually, when you look at what Iran is, they're like the linchpin that makes the Eurasian program of the Belt and Road Initiative. That's what people are looking at there. Is the upper image is the core artery of the new Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative that goes through Iran. A big chunk of it was supposed to go through Syria, but that's been overturned, so that's not going to happen. Syria is now supporting Israel under ISIS control, but a big chunk of that involved trade routes going from China through the Middle East into Europe through Iran. The other one is the north-south below it transportation corridor, and that's featured on that graph where, again, Iran clearly plays the key node in the India to Russia transport corridor. It's 9,000 miles long. It's been 20 years in the making. They're a key part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. That's Iran. They joined that in 2021. They joined the BRICS in 2024. It's like they rejected Rothschild private central banks from the city of London. They're one of the only countries that have successfully staved off the implementation of a Rothschild private central bank in their country. So for people who are saying that, no, that they're a city of London, Rothschild British Empire colony, and that's what's being attacked by the good guys. People, I got to just say for those listening, you're being hypnotized. That's not true. It's a hypnotic induction to get people to transfer over their idea of Iran is actually not Iran. It is the city of London, and thus it is good to destroy it. That's a hypnotic induction. I'm not speaking to you, Gordon. I'm speaking to anybody in the audience who might be a little confused because this is being amplified by a lot of influencers currently across the board. It's quite astounding. Even some of our friends have started chewing on this narrative, and it's just
it's because people have been sending me their stuff for a while now, and one of the things that they put out right after Maduro was arrested was the assertion that Maduro was a MI6 asset and he was working for the London bankers, and there's just so much evidence to suggest it's the complete opposite of that.
And you prove that so well in your presentations. He's been actually working to destroy that entire narco banking network. Absolutely. I got to get ready to go. Unfortunately, it's at the top of the hour, and I have another big interview. So
last thing you should look into as we break the Lloyd's of London stuff. The shipping industry is like the insurance for shipping has been totally brought to a grinding halt because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Every ship that leaves port, for those listening, you get an insurance policy on it in case it doesn't reach its destination for any reason. And they have what's called a war clause. They have they have war risk. So if there's a war and things get closed down because of that, the insurance company pays out because of it. So all these ships are now trapped because the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Those insurance companies are gonna have to pay out all these premiums, and apparently the entire insurance industry is now threatened because of it. Trump now put out an executive order saying he is now gonna, the U.S. is gonna now start providing insurance and basically take over the insurance industry, with the U.S. Navy backing it. That's interesting to me. Let's see what happens, because Petro said they're going after the big cartel guys, the leaders, which are the bankers, the financiers, insurance industry, right? So let's see what happens. That's an interesting little subplot to keep track of.
Yeah, well, there's a fight over maritime control over the world, so that's very interesting. Okay, cool. Well, that's interesting subplot you just threw out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you need to sign off, there's some rants. So, I will do the rants if you need to sign off, though.
Cool. All right. Enjoy the rants. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see y'all probably on Monday for the typical movie night, and then next week we'll jump back on Breaking History.
Oh wait, hold on. StreamYard kicked me out, logged me out, so I don't know if I can actually shut down the show.
Oh no.
Here, just do this. Let's just end the show, guys. I'm gonna save all the rants, and we will do all the rants next week. So I'm gonna save them.
Right.
I'm gonna put them on the mind map, and then we will do all the rants next week. But yes, StreamYard has logged me out. This kind of stuff happens every few weeks. StreamYard's been getting on my last nerve. So
all right, next week we'll tackle all these comments. All right, bye guys.
All right, see y'all later.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.